Welcome back to the Jin's Treasure. Thank you everyone for your patience. I know it's been so long since my last video, over a week. So this video is long overdue and I put a lot of thought into it. I've been moving stuff around, moving myself around, and trying to find a new location to do these recordings. So this is kind of just a trial. We will see if this location, if it works after I do all the video editing and whatnot. In any case, today I wanted to do something a little special as a thank you for, as a little gratitude for your patience sticking with me. What we have is a bunch of scrap wire. So these are wires that actually were gifted to me from an electrician. They were just leftover copper wire. And this is some old scrap wire, actually from something similar to what I was going to be doing, what I'll be doing today, I should say. And with that, let's get into it. So today we're going to be doing another little bonsai copper wire tree, and we're going to wrap the tree around this little smooth, it's like a river stone. It's been smoothed by the river's current, and I think that it would be a nice one to wrap for just like a tiny little wire wrapped copper tree. So the first thing that I'm going to do is clip off all these loose wires here. Let's put that on camera so you can see what I'm doing actually. Although there's nothing really special about just clipping the wires. It's just as I said, just clipping the excess, kind of like trimming the hedges in a sense. And we'll see, we might even have enough wire in all this that we don't need to use all this electrician's free copper wire. But we will see. I'll just set it aside for now so we have a little bit of space to work with. And actually I think what I'll do, I'm going to take at least one of those wires, because looking at these wires here, seems like they might not be quite long enough for what I want to do. I think that if I fold this wire in thirds, what I want to do is get about a forearm's length of wire. So that right there looks good. And I'll cut that and then see, yep, it's going to be about, make 3 of these longer wires. We'll set them aside to differentiate which wire is which. And then from here, oh, and one more thing before I start that is I want to get a wire that's going to be slightly smaller than the circumference area of whatever side I decide will be the flat bottom. So I'm just arbitrarily picking this wire because I know it's at least enough length to cover that. And you might even want to do a little bit wider. I think I'll keep the ring so it's placed like that. It could be a little bit exposed from the bottom. And then I did clip 1 or 2 of these skinnier wires, and I think for that what I'll do is just kind of tie this ring by wrapping bands. I'm just kind of weaving through that little ring or that hole, that circle. Weaving in through, out, over, and around. I'm just going all the way through until I don't have any more of this skinnier wire left. I'm not entirely sure what the gauge is, what the gauge size for these wires are, so I won't pretend to tell you. I won't pretend to know and tell you. But the truth is that for this type of wrap, it really doesn't matter. It's more contingent on the size of the stone. I think a larger stone could use a larger gauge of wire, and with a smaller stone, you could get away with a smaller gauge of wire. So now we're just gonna simply wrap the rest of this end, completing the tie so that this is now a closed loop. And then from there, what we're gonna do is with our longer wires, we're just gonna attach 1, 2, and 3. Kind of looks like a Mercedes-Benz logo, a very cheap one. But what we're gonna do is just attach these at the 3 ends so that they're kind of evenly dispersed around the ring. And the way to do that, as I take this one end, is pinch down on the tip and curl a little hook. And then we're gonna take our ring and just attach that hook. And you wanna try to make it as tight as possible. So what I'll do is with the pliers fingers, I'll just twist a little bit more, curl a little bit more on that curled tip end of the thicker gauge wire, and then clamp down. And do my best to make sure that that very tip end is not poking out. So if we can get the camera to focus, what I'm doing is taking the, come on, focus. I'm taking the flat part of the pliers and just smooshing down on the tip end of that wire. So now it's fully attached, and as well that hook end is not poking out. So now I'll do just the same thing with the next, creating that hook, taking the hook, kind of estimating what would be like the equidistance split 3 ways, and attaching to that end of the ring or the loop, the circle wire. And then the same thing, just smooshing down on the very tip end so that it's not poking out. We don't have to do a lot of wraps around. Really just one is sufficient, so long as the wire is not gonna fall off. And then we're gonna finish this step by finally attaching the last of the 3. So I've created the hook, I've hooked that tip end onto the circle, and now I'm just gonna completely latch it on there. And then smush down on the tip. So you see how it's a little poking out there? That's what I'm saying, is that I want to smush down on that and kind of massage it to go into the curl so that there is no pokey tip. And it's kind of distorted, that ring. Not that it was a perfect circle to begin with, but that's all right, because the base of this riverstone is also not a perfect circle, so it's not the end of the world. And I do see that there's this little tip hanging out. Not a giant concern, but I do just want to curl that inwards as well. And the idea is that this will be hidden under the base of the stone so that it's not poking out. Now, what I'm going to do is take all 3 wires and bend them up and around. And if you've ever wrapped Christmas gifts, it actually kind of reminds me of this, the same style, same method. So actually we'll fold all 3 over, completely over, making sure that they are wrapping snug on the stone. So I'm keeping my finger here pressed right at the middle point where they all fold over. And then I'll fold them up once they've all been wrapped, except for the last one, which what I will do, instead of folding it up like the other two, I'll begin wrapping around those two, wrapping around and upwards, so it's kind of spiraling. And you can see this little tapestry sheath that I have here is getting pulled because my hand here is really pushing down on this fabric. And once you get a few good wraps and it's kind of like locked in place, from there you can begin just twisting all three of them. So if you pinch down at the tip where they all kind of separate from, and just continue twisting. And what you get is a really nice, even tangle, kind of how rope is made. If anyone out here knows how rope is made, I know because I did a little field trip as a kid, and they showed us how how to make rope from horsehair. So once we get kind of maybe just over halfway in length, so this length that is wrapped is slightly longer than the length of the ends here. Now we can just split them. We kind of want to keep them somewhat, it's kind of like a duck foot, so they're sprawled out, but they're all more or less pointing upwards. You don't want to have them bend completely down like that. You want to keep it looking like arms raising up to the sky, and that's because that's more realistic of how tree branches are. They are reaching up towards the nourishment of the sun. And it's a little bit loose here at the bottom. So what I think I'll do is take just a few more of these smaller, well, shorter. They're certainly not, they're about the same gauge as this wire here. And what I'm gonna do is take maybe 3 of them and just attach 3 more hooks onto the bottom, just to really give me the peace of mind that the stone is not loose in there and it's not going to fall out. So now that I've got the hook attached, I'm just going to swing it all the way up and around, and you want to make sure that you wrap it around in such a sense that it continues the flow starting from here all the way around. As you can see, that's how the buildup goes. Because if I take it from around here, and then, so if I took it around from here and then went around this way, it will contradict the natural spiral that I've already created. So I want to continue on with that flow. And as well, I want to make sure that that I'm not wrapping, for example, if I wrap it like this, more tightly, you can notice, it's right away noticeable that this doesn't go with the natural flow. So if these wires are wrapped kind of more smoothly, then I want to go kind of just following along inside the grooves, so to speak. And it doesn't have to go all the way up. In fact, I might just stop right there because this, as I said, this wire is a little bit shorter than the rest, so I wouldn't expect it to reach all the way up. I'm gonna take the camera back a little bit just so you can see how messy my room is. No, I'm just kidding. What I really want you to see is how it's beginning to look like a tree with the branches splitting off. Although my room is a little bit messy, I admit. But that's okay. And then the next thing I'll do is the same thing over again with this other wire. It's about the same gauge, but it is slightly shorter than even that last one. So what we do is, once again, we begin with the hook, curling that hook. We'll take the hook, find a nice big gap, and then we'll attach the wire to the base in that gap. And what I mean by gap is like there's a wide gap here as opposed to a shorter gap here. And then we're just gonna pinch that hook and curl it shut so that the wire is securely wrapped. And then as best we can, just make sure that tip is not poking out. So now it's snug and there's no pokey tip. And from there, we're just gonna do the same thing, attach it going in that natural spiral way, following alongside the grooves. And it will be the same thing. We're not gonna go all the way up since it's a shorter branch limb. I'll probably just stop right about there. So now it's turning into a three-dimensional art piece. And let's see. It looks like the stone is pretty securely in there now. It's not gonna fall out. There's no gaps that are wide enough that the stone can slip through. So now I can begin doing kind of the easy part. Kind of the same method. You just pinch a curl, only for now, you're gonna attach it right here instead of all the way at the base. And that's why you can get away with the wires being a little bit shorter. You just wanna make sure that the hook, just like when it's attached to the base, the hook is all the way closed. So we'll just pinch that closed. And then from here, we can begin working a little bit faster. Okay, and then once it starts to get short, you can stop and just kind of peel these branches out. So right now it's looking like a very sparse, like it's almost like a wire Christmas tree when you're starting to install the wire. And we're just gonna use up the rest of the wire that we have here. I'll show you the last technique, or the last step to really enhance the beauty of the wire tree. Once I attach this hook here, it'll be like the final phase or final step. I think that's fine for now. Continuing, making sure that we're going in the continued flow direction. We'll spin this all the way around. And then once we get to where that lowest branch is, what we're gonna do is, instead of continuing the flow upwards on the main branch, we're actually gonna begin to wrap these two around each other. So now this branch that's split off has split off again into two smaller branches. And we're going to do that with the rest of this wire as well. So begin with the hook. And there's this little gap right here, I noticed. So there's no rules against just attaching the wire to this gap right here. And I think that in a way it actually helps, because this will help pull this gap tight. That's the idea anyway. I might even just weave it under to help anchor in that loose gap wire there. And then from there, I'll spin up. And my goal is to make it to this second lowest branch, just overlapping that lowest branch right there, just passing it right up. And then from here, attaching to that second lowest hanging branch. And so if I back up, now you can see how it's starting to form, and you can do that with the longer wires going up all 4 of these other branches, the higher branches. And I'm going to pause the video here because I've shown you everything that I want to show you today. And then if I were just to continue recording, it would just be me doing some wire wrapping, doing the same repetitive tasks without really talking. So to skip you that bore, I'm just going to go ahead and shut off the camera and then give you a little snippet of what it looks like when it's the final product. All right, so here's the end result of the wire wrap tree. Just a few things before we wrap up, pun intended. You want to make sure that the tips of all the branches are just kind of pointing slightly upwards. And that's kind of to replicate what is more realistic, because the tip ends of the branches are always the lightest and therefore easiest to uplift and reach towards the sun. And as you go up and move along and massage, you also want to keep an idea of the even disbursement. So if you can see how it's the branches are spreading out in all the directions, as opposed to just top and bottom or left to right. They're going in all directions. And in fact, these 2 branches here kind of are not matching that. So I'm just gonna massage them a little bit so that they are a little bit more curvy and less parallel to each other. And then once you've done that, the only other thing that I'd like to add is that any other scrap wire that you may have ended up clipping off because the lengths were too long at the end, you can just wrap them around the base. That way it gives the illusion, well, not the illusion, but it makes the base look a lot more thicker. And then as you go up, it gets skinnier and skinnier. All right, that's our time for today. Thank you.